At the confusing martial arts fair, the sword light was like a waterfall, stimulating the cold wind of the north. The young swordsman Ling Jun held the green long sword in his hand, and the sword was like a dragon, forcing his opponent to retreat. The opponent from Shushan fell to the ground, gasping for breath. No one dared to hide this young man in his 20s. His art is pure and mature, and comes from the frost blade heart method passed down from generation to generation by the family. It tells that this mind method hides the shadow of the ancient divine realm. Suddenly, a burning flame burst out from the Lingqi body, like the flame of Suerte, a fire in the Northern European mythology. His body trembled involuntarily, and his sword tip was slightly offset, causing some injuries in surrounding heroes. The power of darkness has quietly submerged for a long time, and their shadows have covered the venue like a ghost, trying to use this to gain his blood power. Ling Jun's vision was blurred and his chest was burning like fire. He pressed down on this strange change, and he found that he could not control it. An invisible backlash power went up against the current, causing the breath around him to storm, forcing the nearby warriors to retreat. "Don't worry, let me keep my mind." The old teacher, Bai Mei, shouted anxiously. He was Ling Jun's benefactor. He had traveled to the divine realm in the past and witnessed the battle of the divine. The old man's palms grabbed Ling Jun's shoulder like an iron clasp, and his words were filled with grief. "The northern Euro blood in your body has been awakened. This is your fate, and it cannot be denied by human power." Ling Jun gritted his teeth and endured the pain, and his sweat slid down his head. He knew that what the teacher said was right. The ancestors of the family once mentioned that they were descendants of the guardian gods, and the flames that fell from the gods were sealed in the blood. The dark assassin took advantage of the trouble, and a shaped boundary suddenly rose, trying to escape the way between the shady zombies. Ling Jun rushed to fight back, but because the backlash power lost control, the sword scattered, causing some influence to the teacher. The old man snatched his sleeves to resolve the crisis, his eyes fixed. "Don't be here, the mission of the family is not here. You must see that lost ancient drama to control this power." Ling Jun took a deep breath, suppressing the restlessness in his lower body, and his eyes flashed. He turned around and left the venue with his teacher, stepping onto the unknown mountain road, where more secrets of the divine realm were hidden. In the wind, the sound of the drama is far away, as if telling a deeper level of examination. Ling Jun and his teacher, Bai Mei, walked along the winding mountains, with shadows swaying, and the deep forest was filled with mist and slight scent. The mountain wind carried the damp dirt and occasionally rolled up and down the leaves, covering their feet. After leaving the hustle and bustle of the martial arts fair, Ling Jun's chest was still hurting, and the flame-like alien force was like a slump in the wilderness, ready to move. He held the green longsword tightly and walked smoothly, but he could not ignore the restlessness in his body. Chuanhu, this forest was once the edge of the ancient divine realm. The old man with white eyebrows opened his mouth, his voice low and steady. His eyes swept over the ancient trees around him, and these giant trees in the sky were said to be the existence of the aftermath of the god of war. The ancestors of your family were originally guardians of the northern European divine realm, and they were in line with the fire giant. The flame blood was not a root, but a mission to give to him. The old man stopped slightly, and his eyes flashed far away from the memory. When he was young, he had dived into the depths of the divine realm and witnessed the magical struggle, almost killing the sharp blade of the frost giant. This period of experience made him learn to endure in guidance. Ling Jun tried to calm the changes in his body, sat on a piece of moss-covered stone, took a deep breath, and condensed his mind. Suddenly, a cold shadow penetrated from the forest, trying to invade his consciousness. The power of the invisible vine was swaying his mind, making the flame blood even more irritable. He gritted his teeth and slammed out an arc of light. The air shook off the surrounding fog and temporarily suppressed the invasion. "Master, is this shadow a pursuer of the dark force?" His words were determined, and he was breathing. The old man pointed his head and his eyes were filled with worries. "It's not a direct attack, but a more poisonous technique. In the past, I was in the divine realm, and I had seen a curse similar to a curse, which had to be resolved by my own will. He stretched out his palm and injected a pure internal force to help Ling Jun calm his mind. At the same time, a secret boundary appeared in front of it, like an invisible wall blocking the way. Ling Jun stood up, the sword tip trembled lightly, using the frost blade heart technique to break through the boundary 3 times in succession, and the sword wind danced with the rise and fall leaves, revealing the hidden mountain road. During this period of cultivation and conversation, the tacit understanding between the master and the disciple deepened. Ling Jun felt that the flames in his heart were no longer so wild, but gradually turned into controllable protection. He stood up, took off the dust from his clothes, and continued to move forward with his teacher. The mountains and forests seemed to be waiting for them to uncover the secrets of the ancient drama. Their voices are light, their pace is steady, and they embark on a further journey. The shadows passing through the forest became thinner. Ling Qian and the old man with white eyebrows walked along the newly exposed mountain road. The gravel under his feet was surrounded by crystal ice chips, and a valley in front of him was suddenly unfolding. The walls of the mountain valley stand thousands of feet high, and the surface is covered with thick ice layers. The cold air cuts the air like a knife, and a low roar sound is coming. It is the border of the Northern European divine realm, and it is said that it was once the guardian land of the frost giant. Ling Jun felt the flame blood in his body vibrated slightly, as if he was responding to this extremely cold environment. His hand holding the sword couldn't help but tighten, and his pace did not stop. When you arrived at the deep valley of the ice valley, an ancient stone door was hidden in the ice wall. Runes were engraved on it, emitting a vast light of Northern Europe's divine power. The frost realm surged in like a living creature, covering the surrounding space, and trying to seal the entrance. Ling Jun knew that he could not be suspicious, so he pulled out the green longsword and activated the power of flames in his body. When the sword blade was about to be stained with a layer of red light, he headed towards the boundary. The first blow triggered a recoil, and the ice revolved like a tide, forcing him to retreat several steps. The internal force instantly became restless, as if he wanted to swallow his reason. At the same time, the cold wind phantoms around him appeared like a ghost, twisted into a blurred figure, trying to confuse his mind, and whispered with false indignation, "Give up, the flames will turn into ashes." Ling Jun gritted his teeth, curling his mind and gathered his mind without letting the phantom enter in the dark. He glanced at the teacher standing aside, and the eyes of the ancient stone flashed a certainty. It was the mark of the old man's young experience in the divine realm. That year, he had single-handedly shot a fight against the frost giant, but he was careless and stuck in the ice cave. That period taught him how to protect his disciples in crisis. Damn, remember, your blood is not a pure fire, but a shield given by God. The old man with white eyebrows said softly, his words were steady and gentle. He slapped Ling Jun's back with a light palm, injecting a steady internal force to help him suppress his impatience. In the past, I mistook the phantom and sacrificed my life. Only if my will is like a sword can I break the deadlock. This sentence made Ling Jun feel warm in his heart. He took a deep breath and slammed the sword again. The flames collided with the frost, and a dazzling spark burst out. After the confrontation, his power gradually became controlled by him, and the sword finally broke into the boundary, and the stone gates slowly opened. The disciples stepped into the door, and the breath in the passage turned into peace, and was filled with the ancient breath of the divine realm. They continued to walk deeper, and the road to treasure quietly unfolded. As the teacher and the disciple walked deeper along the passage, the ancient breath of the divine realm became thicker and strange talismans appeared on the stone walls around them, slightly moving like a living thing. Ling Jun stepped through a hidden crack and suddenly sank under his feet, leading them to fall into a wide cave. The light in the cave was dim, and the smell of metal and soil lingered in the air. The surrounding rocks were covered with luminous moss, emitting soft blue light, illuminating a flat stone platform in the center. There sat a white-haired swordsman, wearing broken leather armor, an old sword stuck to his waist, and his eyes were as deep as a cold pool. The master was named Ivar, who was once a guardian of the Northern European divine realm. He said that during the Frost Giants' battle, he destroyed the defenses of his allies to change his escape. That was his humiliating seal, which had been hidden here for many years, guarding the property of a seal, a secret that could awaken the blood. When Ivar saw the arrival, he stood up slowly, and his voice was like a low thunderbolt. "Outsiders, your flames are too irritating. This is not a game venue for bow." The old man with white eyebrows bowed and replied, "I heard Ivar's name, and today I will bring my disciples to ask for advice. The exam will be launched immediately." Ivar ordered Lingqi to stand on the stone platform and demonstrated a move that integrates will, saying, "Your blood needs to be fire to be stable." Lingqi held the sword and fought. Unexpectedly, the phantoms in the cave suddenly appeared. The shadows were like twisted smoke, surging his arms and trying to take the blade. The secondary interference distracted him, and the sword was out of control for a while, and the internal force sucked his chest. He gritted his teeth and tried to force, and released an arc line striking air, which only dispersed some of the phantoms. The old man with white eyebrows was on the side and said, "Stay calm and don't let external things get into trouble." During the confrontation, Ivar stepped forward and pointed the stones on the tip of the sword, revealing his past. "In the past, due to a thought, I forgot the oath of the divine realm, which led to the rebirth of countless warriors. That regret is like a sharp blade, which teaches me that the sword should be integrated with the will." His words were straightforward and heavy, which shocked Lingqi's heart and realized that the guidance of the teacher was connected with this. With this start, Lingqi took a deep breath and ran away again, combining the power of blood and the sword, finally suppressing the phantom and initially controlling the new technology. When collecting the sword, the disciples thanked Ivar, and the atmosphere in the cave was calm. They turned around and walked further towards the passage, and the secret of inheritance was waiting to be revealed. The teacher left the cave and crawled up along the winding underground passage, and soon felt the cold wind outside. The mountains and forests in the north are like an invisible net, with ancient pines with erect branches standing around, and the branches are covered with frost, as if they are whispering ancient sayings. The soft moonlight penetrated the thin mist and cast hazy light and shadow, making Lingqi unable to help but speed up his pace. The teacher then looked around with alertness. Unexpectedly, their blood was exposed like flames, attracting the attention of the dark force. Several black shadows emerged from the forest, as fast as a night stalk, holding a poisonous sword in his hand. His eyes were cold and heartless. They are the lackeys of the frost giant, who specialize in killing the people of the divine realm. Lingqi pulled out the long sword, and the sword reflected a cold light and shouted, "Who is coming? How dare you block our way?" The teacher replied in a deep voice, "These guys are the remaining parties of the Enian cult. Don't say much, just take your time first and be tight." The battle broke out, and the shadow assassins surrounded him with ghostly body movements, and a plan was towards Lingqi's shoulders. He flew away from his side, and a storm of arcs-fused blood was released, forcing the nearest enemy to retreat. Unexpectedly, the confusion of the mountains and forests suddenly became aggravated, and the visual line was blurred. At this moment, a lurking ice wolf emerged from the bush, and his sharp claws rushed straight into the master, adding to the chaos of the war. Lingqi was anxious and rushed to the sword and swept the wolf. However, he lost his accuracy due to the fog and was poisoned. The teacher breathed and retreated to a giant pine tree, slapped his sleeves to dissolve the blow, and his words were calm and sound. "In the past, I missed the Shadow Church to try to dismantle their treacherous things, but because of a moment of negligence, it led to the rebirth of allies." The teaching was like a bone spur. "Child, calm your sword, the blood force needs to be united with the will." His words inspired the thorns like winter wind, and the young man gritted his teeth and ran, integrating the new techniques into the attack, and pierced the assassin in the mist. As the war broke out, the enemy retreated into the deep forest. The disciples took the opportunity to move forward and continued along the mountain. The fog gradually became thinner and the storm seemed to be closer. The disciples walked along the winding mountains, and the deep mist covered the surroundings like a curtain, spreading a low wind, as if an ancient soul was murmuring. Lingqi held the long sword tightly, his steps were steady, his eyes swept across the skeleton around him, and his brain was still filled with the previous storm. The teacher followed behind him and breathed calmly. He occasionally stopped to observe the terrain and reminded him to pay attention to the hidden dangers. Soon, they arrived at a stone platform that opened, and a circle of exquisitely carved runestone stadiums stood in the center. These stone blocks are covered with moss and cracks, and the surface is flashed with light blue light, as if they have absorbed the essence of the Northern European divine realm and hidden the secret of loss. Ling Jun stepped onto the stone platform and felt a strange movement, as if the earth was whispering. This is the key thread of seeing the magic drama. He thought to himself. Without saying much, he focused on the surroundings. Suddenly, a frost stone statue woke up from the center of the stone courtyard. The huge body covered with crystal ice layers emitted a bitter cold and came towards them. The two eyes of the stone statue are flashing red, dancing with frosted arms, and their strength is like a mountain collapse. Ling Junxing's sword was hit, injecting the blood force into the sword move, and an arc-line sword burst through the cold current, but the attack was not completely resolved. The teacher shouted, "Be careful, its coldness can swell muscles and bones." He turned around and dissolved, and at the same time noticed that the rune began to twist its vision, and the surrounding scenery changed like a phantom, making Ling Jun unable to tell the difference between me. In the battle, the rune fantasy plays difficult, the direction is wrong, and some are swept by the stone statues. He gritted his teeth and calmly stopped the sword. The teacher took the opportunity to pull him back into the hidden cave next to him. The cave was empty and the wall was full of ancient figures. The teacher gasped against the stone wall, and his eyes flashed with fatigue. "In the past, when I entered the divine realm, I fought with allies of the clan," he said quietly. "I was young at that time, and I misunderstood and made them completely defeated. That regret is like a deep-seated text that will never fade. Child, remember that your blood is not a single pure force, and you need to be driven with your heart." This made Ling Jun's chest feel hot, and he replied with a pointed finger, "Master, I understand, we will break through." After a little rest, they returned to the stone temple, observed the prophetic text on the rune, and mentioned the secret of the balance between the divine sword and the three realms, but it was still vague and difficult to solve. The teacher continued to explore and walked along the stone platform. The fog scattered and the road extended to a deeper valley. The master walked along the valley in a quiet way, and the thin fog gradually dissipated like a silkworm, revealing the concealed silhouette of the road ahead. Ling Jun's eyes locked in a group of ancient trees far away. There stood a magnificent stone hall, covered with winding vines and strange carvings, as if carrying the ancient murmurs. The hall door was half closed, and a faint blue light came from the inside, accompanied by a biting chill. This is their new link to chase the magic sword ropes. Ling Jun felt a sense of determination in his heart, and his hand holding the sword was slightly forceful. When they stepped into the hall, they immediately felt the changes in the environment. The surrounding air seemed to come alive, forming a layer of twisted illusion mystery, and the shadows of trees and stone walls in the visual line intersected and changed, making it difficult for people to distinguish the true feelings. Suddenly, a large monster emerged from the darkness, and was like a twisted flame giant, releasing the breath of dark cold flames. It absorbs rune energy in the hall, and constantly regenerates and breaks its limbs, roaring like thunder. Ling Junxing rushed forward and poured the blood force into the blade. A rapid sword light tore through the cold flames, which was twisted by the illusion, causing some backlash. He shouted, "Master, this phantom is so sensible." Master responded in a low voice, "So calm your mind and don't let it hinder your steps." While the battle was in full swing, a figure emerged from the corner of the hall, a man in gray robe holding an old rune stick. His eyes were sharp and his movements were quick, and he resolved the monster's cold flame attack. The man opened his mouth, "I am Kar, a native of the Northern European divine realm. My family once fought against the shadow cult with your old allies. The tragedy was like eternal frost and snow that swallowed too many innocent people." This sentence shocked the teacher Fu slightly, and his eyes flashed through the old days' recollection, and he said with a pointed look, "My old friend's blood is not over, we are grateful for your help." Ling Jun heard the sound, and his heart was full of slaughter, and the sword was even more certain. The three of them worked together. Karl's rune art forced the regeneration of the monster, Ling Jun's blood striking the key points, and the teacher resolved the interference of the illusion. After fierce exchanges, the monster finally disintegrated and turned into a dispersed black fog. They found a piece of stone engraved with predictions in the center of the temple, which was recorded on it. After a little tidying up, the disciples and Ka left the temple together, and continued to move along the valley bottom, with their eyes set on the farther mountain. The disciples and Ka walked along the valley floor, and the frost vines on both sides climbed onto the rock wall like silver, and the cold wind swelled up the fine snow, covering the trap marks on the road ahead. Ling Jun walked in the front, his steps were stable, and his mind was restless. He was suddenly stunned, and a burning heat exploded in his body like lava, and the blood force flowed like wild flames, bringing stinging torture. The illusion appears, the blurred family figure flashes in the snow, a tall man dances with runes and murmured with an ancient oath. Ling Jun gritted his teeth and stopped, and said in a whisper, "This fire, it is swallowing me." Carl swept around vigilantly and noticed the movements on the ground. "Be careful that there is a frost and cold boundary hidden under the foot of the valley. If you are not careful, it will collapse." He raised his rune staff and tried to explore the way forward with a light golden light. The teacher held Ling Jun's shoulder, his eyes deep, revealing a shadow of his past. "Your blood comes from Odin's descendants. In the past, in the Divine Realm War, they exchanged flames for eternal protection, and also carried the curse of madness." This shocked Ling Jun's heart. He held the handle of the sword, tried to suppress the internal troubles, and saw the ice thorns surrounding the frost condensed into sharp spikes, and came to the team. Ling Junxiang dissolved the blow, and the sword light brought a heat wave, but it left the duct due to the loss of control of the blood vessels, causing some injuries in tutors. The teacher stepped back and calmed down. "Don't let the anger lead, remember your moral heart." Kar helped, and his rune art turned into a barrier, resolving the threat of the ice thorn. The three of them calmed down their feet for a while, and Ling Jun took a deep breath of the cold air, forcing himself to recall the family's teachings. Through this confrontation, he gradually felt the rhythm of blood, directed his strength to the tip of the sword, breaking through the weakness of the boundary. Although the crisis was resolved, Ling Jun's eyes were still filled with confusion. Although this force helped him, it was like a potential wilderness that might backfire at any time. The teacher patted his back and signaled to continue moving forward. Carl explored the way forward. They climbed up along the little line, their eyes locked in the blurred silhouette of the far mountain. The team's tacit understanding has become more tight during this journey, and the pace is full of unscrupulous determination. The three of them climbed up the winding mountains and finally arrived at the broad platform of the mountain, which was already the hot center of the Wuling conference. The lights are high and the torches reflect the crowds. The warriors dance with weapons, and the air is filled with the breath of metal and sweat. As soon as Ling Jun stepped into this noisy place, he felt the blood in his body tremble slightly, as if he was stimulated by the competitive atmosphere around him, bringing a difficult and suppressed urge. He rubbed his arms, tried to cover up the picture and glanced over the stage where the martial arts competition was being played. There were masters fighting and the sword was flying. The teacher noticed his strangeness and said in a low voice, "Child, the atmosphere here is strong and can easily cause illness in your body. Remember the ancient teachings of the family, whether the fire is burning, you must control it with your heart." This made Ling Jun recall the words of his ancestors, saying that they had exchanged Odin's blessing with blood in the war in the divine realm, and also left this shadow of wild power. The teacher's words steadily reveal the long-term cultivation of his long-term cultivation, which made Ling Jun slightly lighter and a warm feeling surged in his heart. Not long after, a powerful martial arts master challenged Ling Jun. The man was burly, holding a giant axe, and said he was from the northern tribe and proficient in ice-field combat skills. At the beginning of the game, Ling Junying rushed to the ball, and the ball was as fast as the wind, but it was slightly deviated due to bloody impetuousness in the middle of the game, and it was a little missed. The opponent seized the opportunity, and the giant axe rushed over, bringing a cold wind. Carl murmured the runes on the scene to help protect his body, but he didn't say much. Ling Jun took a deep breath, forcing himself to recall what his teacher said, and condensed his mind on the tip of the sword. With a blow, he turned his blood into a driving force, and the sword light broke through the night sky like a flash, forcing his opponent to retreat. Despite winning this amount, he felt a sense of lingering. That power that helped him win could be as scattered as a torrent that could be bleak at any time. The teacher patted his shoulder, with affirmation in his eyes. You have made progress and no longer be single-handedly brave. The team then integrated into the crowd, continued to search for the traces of the magic sword, and was filled with new tacit understanding in their steps, moving towards the next challenge. The three of them left the hustle and bustle of the mountain platform and walked down the hidden ancient road. The night was deeper and the moonlight was on the winding little road. The head of the ridge is steady and the sheath in his hand reflects a faint light. They followed the ropes resolved by the teacher's master from the old scroll and advanced towards the border of the divine realm, which was the entrance to the northern border in the legend. Carl carried his luggage and spit out white fog in his breath, which was particularly alert. When crossing the border, the environment changes. The cold wind was like a hidden sharp blade, cutting towards their faces. There was a sideless ice field in front of us, and snowflakes swirled like dancers. The teacher said in a low voice, "This is the place where the Odin divine realm is trying to find the land. It is said that the former resident once set a barrier here to block the invaders." Lingqi pointed his head, and the blood in his body began to turn over, which was even more difficult to suppress in the cold. The force was like a hidden wild beast, causing the limbs to become stiff. He held the handle of the sword and tried to calm his body with his will. In front, an ice-cold secret path stood on the snow wall, bounding the blue light, blocking the way. Lingqi took a deep breath, and the sword move started, and the sword blade broke through the air, collided with the boundary, causing ice chips. But halfway through, his bloody restlessness increased, and he moved a little and was defeated by the recoil force. Carl quickly chanted the ancient talisman and summoned a thin layer of fog to protect the body to relieve the coldness. Later, they rested by the fire at a time. The teacher's tuition was filled with hot wine, and his words were gentle. "Child, I learned from the family that your ancestors had established a blood alliance with the northern European gods to pay for the sake of protecting the three realms. The alliance gives you strength, but it also brings this terrible disease. Remember, strength needs to be grasped by the heart." Lingqi stared at the flame, calmed down in his heart, and replied lightly, "Master, I will learn to control it, not let it become a burden." This time, the team reorganized and continued to go deeper into the secret passage. The snowy sounded gradually into the night. They advanced along the frozen secret path, stepping on the frosted stone, emitting a low crispness. Lingqi opened the road first, and the sword was as angry as a barrier, splitting the ice around it, and the ancient blood inside its body was ready to move in the extreme cold. He glanced at the scroll in the teacher's hand, with blurry symbols flashing in the glimmer of light, guiding them into this forbidden area of the divine realm. Carl followed behind, his eyes slapped at the snow walls around him, and occasionally murmured, calling out the faint warm current to resist the chill. Soon, a high-profile rune stone tablet in front of me suddenly appeared in front of me, with an ancient Nordic script on the surface, and it was like a living thing, illuminating blue light. The teacher hurriedly opened the scroll and compared it, and said in a low voice, "This is Odin's scene, recording the hiding of the debris of the magic sword." Lingqi approached, touching the stone tablet with his fingertips, and a strange energy penetrated into his body, instantly revealing the blurry image of a mysterious cave. But this touch also shocked the boundaries around, with a low warning sound coming from afar, and the dark patrol guard appeared like a ghost, holding a flashing magic weapon in his hand. The illusion of the fog rises, twisting the visual line, turning the snow into a maze-like illusion. Lingqi strongly suppressed the bloody restlessness, and the blade slammed out a series of quick moves to resolve the sudden attack of the guard, but it moved slightly due to the resistance of internal forces. Carl shouted, "Be careful, these mists are extensions of the curse." The teacher chanted the talisman and tried to resolve the pressure of the boundary. Just as the guard approached, they retreated into a small ice cave to avoid it. At this hidden hiding place, Master Fu ignited a faint cluster of fire and said quietly, "Lingqi, my family was the guardian of the Blood Alliance. I learned from my ancestors that this alliance not only gave strength, but also it a prophecy about the power of darkness. Ling Jun clenched his fist and replied calmly, Mister, I will not let this blood become a weak point. This made Master Fu smile slightly and said with a pointed look, Good boy, we continue to move forward and reveal the truth of this tragedy. The team adjusted a little and set off on the road again. The voice outside the ice cave gradually calmed down and their steps merged into the endless snowfield. They walked out of the ice cave, the snowy fields under the night were like frost, and the blue light from the runestone tablet guided the front, like a winding belt of light. Ling Jun held the handle tightly and walked forward. Afterwards, the scroll in his hand swayed slightly, reflecting the obscure figure. Carl looked down at the surrounding ice crystals, muttering himself, trying to maintain the warmth around his body, and unconsciously swaying the energy flow in the air. The teacher stopped in front of a hidden ice wall. The stone surface there was filled with ancient Northern European runes, like a living trunk moving. He turned to Ling Jun and said calmly, Child, the key to controlling blood lies in Odin's protection method. My family has guarded the Blood Alliance for generations, inherited this secret from the ancestors of Viking, which can allow your power to share the divine realm. Ling Jun pointed his head, pulled out the long sword, and his eyes were flashing with a decisive look. He once heard that the Master Fu's family was a disciple of the North, and had an alliance with the gods. He had never studied it deeply. Now this knowledge is igniting like a flame. The teacher chanted a spell lightly, and his fingers planned to produce complicated runes, guiding a warm breath to inject into the Lingqi body. Ling Jun imitated and the blood inside began to rush, and the power surged like a tide. He tried to keep his sword steady, but suddenly lost control. The restless energy collided with the magic, shaking the frozen boundary around him. The cracks spread rapidly, and the ice walls burst out with sharp shatters, threatening their foothold. Carl hurriedly used the warm current, and the idea relieved the coldness, unexpectedly conflicted with the runes, and the visual line instantly twisted into a group of psychedelic phantoms, making it difficult to distinguish the snow. Damn it, this warm current is incompatible with these runes. Carl roared, squirting his hands and scattering the smoke, and his language was filled with the roughness of the Viking warriors. Ling Jun gritted his teeth and pressed the inside, and the blade slashed out an arc of light, stabbing the collapsed ice wall. The teacher stepped forward to support him, and his voice was determined, Ling Jun, remember, the blood alliance of my family has predicted your way. This is not only strength, but also responsibility. Don't let it dominate you. This sentence made a warm current surge in Ling Jun's chest. He took a deep breath and calmed his restlessness. The team took a breath, adjusted their pace, and continued to penetrate the divine realm along the light belt. The snow breeze gently brushed his face, and the road ahead continued to grow. They walked deep into the snow field along the rune light belt, and the snow under their feet was like a layer of frost blade, reflecting the stars in the night sky invisibly. Ling Jun took the lead in his steps, swaying his breath, and trying to test the newly awakened restless force in the body. The teacher followed, and the scrolls were turned around in his hand. Carl kept swaying around him, muttering curses, maintaining a steady stream of heat to fight against the cold wind. In the sky, a secret village appeared before my eyes, and the wooden house ring village was bathed in the faint spiritual light, as if melting with the frozen mountain walls around it. In the middle of the village, a strange wave of energy made Ling Jun alert. The spirit worm was squirming like a giant python squirming underground, twisting the air and twisting the surrounding trees into different shapes. The villagers fled, and a group of monsters rushed out like a tide. The malignant army groups were blurry in shape, as if condensed from darkness, and their roars were swept in the valley. The teacher said in a deep voice, "This is the devil's idea. They manipulated the spirit and tried to swallow the northern border." Ling Jun pulled out the sword, and the sword light shone like a rapid wind to sway the enemy. Carl swung his battle axe and shouted roughly, "Don't even think about touching the land of my northern border." The battle began to develop fiercely, but encountered a secondary obstacle halfway. A traitor from the village suddenly appeared and threw a spell from the secret, destroying their defense. The spirit backfires and the surrounding ice wall began to collapse, releasing more monsters. Ling Jun gritted his teeth and fought. The sword was swift and felt that the blood in his body was out of control again. He led the teacher retreated into the Gu Si who was beside him and gasped, "Master, why are these traits always unscathed?" The teacher's eyes were fixed, revealing the family's pain. "My family once confronted the Demon King. The alliance at that time made us pay the price, and many of our ancestors turned into dust. But this blood alliance also allowed me to witness your potential. Child, controlling it is the key to guarding." This sentence was like a clear stream, strengthening Ling Jun's determination. They quickly returned to the battlefield, and Kar's roar led the troops to calm down. After a series of interaction between sword light and magic, the monster tide has subsided, and the balance of the spirit has been maintained. The village was breathing slowly, and everyone began to clean up the slaughter and prepared to continue. The snow was blowing lightly, and in the night, their eyes were set far away, and the road still needed to move forward. When they left the village, the cold wind of the snowfield was like an invisible sharp blade, cutting the night sky. Ling Jun walked forward, following the faint movement of the underground spirit deep into the frozen earth. The teacher held the scroll in his hand, his eyes swept over the twisted shadows around him, and Karl followed with his steps calmly. The spirit is like a hidden dragon, guiding them through the layered frost and moving towards the temple that is being spoken. On the way, Ling Jun felt the stupidity of the strange power in his body, like a hidden flame jumping in his blood. This was an unprecedented warning sign that made him unable to help but hold the handle. Soon, an ancient temple appeared before my eyes, and the entrance to the cave was enclosed with heavy ice layers, carved with Northern Europe runes, and flashed with dark blue light. The teacher stopped, touched the stone wall lightly, and said in a whisper, "This is the ancient temple. My family once made an alliance here and vowed to guard the fragments of the divine sword." This sentence reveals the regrets of the teacher's family. The past ancestors paid the price of blood to protect the fragments, and changed to an eternal warning. Ling Jun pointed his head, his heart was shocked, and he turned his attention into the hole without saying much. Entering the grotto, they found a shining fragment of swords embedded in the ice crystals in the center. Just as Ling Jun reached out, an ancient frost giant beast woke up from the depths, roaring like thunder, releasing a violent cold wave, shaking the surrounding air. As the giant claws swept, Kar shouted loudly and faced the axe. His strength was like a mountain collapse. "These ancient guards will never forgive the invaders," Karl shouted, his words being rough and firm. During the battle, Ling Jun's sword was swift and violent, suddenly felt blood backfire, and the power was out of control, and the sword light became dispersed and damaged. The teacher saw this and said anxiously, "Child, remember the alliance. That fragment is your key. Take control of it and don't let the internal fire swallow it." This was like a morning bell, awakening Ling Qian's determination. He took a deep breath, adjusted his breathing, and calmed his mind. After fierce exchanges, Karl's axe and Ling Jun's sword light teamed up, and finally retreated from the giant beast, and the fragments fell into his hands. Ling Jun held the fragments and tried to merge the picture. A new force came like a tide, strengthening his drama and accompanied by hidden impetuousness. They took a short rest, sorted out their stares, and their eyes turned to the snowfield ahead, and the road was still long. The teacher patted his shoulder and said lightly, "Stay on, the mission of maintaining is not fulfilled." In the snow, they stepped forward. They continued to trek through the vast snowfield. Ling Jun held the fragments of the divine sword in his palm, and the new force flowed like a secret spring water in his body. The teacher was walking steadily, while Karl was carrying a giant axe and looked around with alert eyes. The voices were like the roar of the past, and the snowflakes danced in the air, covering the feet in front of them. Suddenly, a strange sound of footsteps came from the snow. Ling Jun stopped alertly, and the blade shook slightly. The one who appeared from the white fog was old Ilan, a former martial arts ally who was good at swordsmanship and had once fought against bandits in the border area with Ling Jun. At that time, Aaron's sword was like a rapid wind, always carrying a stream of passionate blood, and he didn't know when it would turn to the darkness. Aaron's eyes were sunken, and he held a blood-stained short blade in his hand. Ling Jun, I've been waiting for you for a long time. That fragment should belong to a stronger force, he said angrily, and he quickly took action and tried to take away the fragments. Ling Yuan wanted to resolve it, but he found that the surrounding frost boundaries suddenly activated, and the frost layer rose like a living thing, blocking the retreat, making the battle more rapid. Carl roared and slapped the axe. The shadow of the axe was as strong as a mountain, but was stretched out by the boundary, and its power was dissipated. Ling Jun's sword quickly emerged, and he exchanged the sword light with Aaron. Every strike tested his control of blood. The restless power helped him, and it was like wildfire. The teacher saw this and said in a low voice, Alan, have you forgotten the kindness of the teacher in the past? The devil once used illusion to plague your mind. You are a person in the right way. This tells Alan's past. He was once a disciple of the teacher, but he was confused by the devil's cave and was gradually lost. Alan sneered, goodness. Master, that's just a shackle. The darkness promised my strength. During the battle, the frost boundary kept releasing the cold air and interfering with the shaking steps. His heart slammed and turned into a certain scheming. As the result is, Ling Jun calms his breath and stabilizes his blood, and the sarcasm is like a meteor, pushing away from Alan. Carl took the opportunity to add an axe and worked together to knock Alan to the ground. The fragments were safe and sound. Alone gasped and retreated into Fengshua, leaving a vague warning. They took a break and checked the injury. The teacher patted Ling Qian's arm. The road is still long, keep moving forward. Xue Yuan was still in the old building, and they were moving forward with their eyes on the deeper shadows. They continued to trek through the snow and ice. The cold wind was like a ghostly whisper, wrapped in fine ice crystals, invading their will. Ling Jun opened the way first, and the magical fragments in his hand shone slightly, as if guiding the direction. Although the teacher's pace was quiet, his eyes were filled with the hot bones of ancient roads. Carl lowered his head and gasped, carrying a giant axe on his shoulder, and his physical strength was exhausted. Suddenly, a deep gap broke into the surface ahead, and the ice wall was like a giant beast's teeth, swallowing up their way. This is the profound and pure myth in the singular world, and a part that was forgotten by the Northern European divine realm. The runes are engraved with stone walls, flashing with strange blue light. Stepping into the deep impurity, they immediately felt the pressure of air, and the illusion rose like a mist, twisting the visual line. The scene of Ling Jun flashing the former master's door in front of him, and the image of Aaron's betrayal reappeared. He couldn't help but hold the stomp tightly, and the power in his blood began to move. The mysterious guardian, a group of spirits, which drifted out from the rune gap, and the magic of manipulating memory made Carl mistakenly believe that Master Fu was the enemy. He roared and attacked with an axe, but was shrunk by the recoil force of the ice wall. Shou Han added the drama here, squeezing their limbs, forcing Ling Jun to disperse the traps around him, and the ice thorns burst out from the ground and pierced his palms. In the center of the rune hall, they temporarily avoid attacks. The teacher leaned against the stone pillar and gasped, Ling Jun, Aaron's transformation is not just the magic of the Demon King. In the past, there was a secret curse from the ancient oath of the Northern European divine realm. Anyone who is contaminated has the mind vulnerable to darkness. I once saw him mist into the forbidden area, and the curse was like a poisonous snake. His words were calm and helpless. Ling Jun pointed his head and his mind became stable. Master, that power is now in my body, and I will not repeat it. This exchange revealed the dark side of Ling Jun's bloody blood. He felt a pure energy surge, gradually disintegrating the illusion. The spirit approached again, and Ling Jun took action, and the sword light was like the northern starlight, tearing the shadow apart. Carl returned to his god, and then added a fierce blow, working together to defeat the retreating guard. They gasped and checked the injuries, their eyes turned to the deep stone tablet, and the secret of the desert emerged. While moving forward, the teacher patted Ling Qian on the shoulder, although this road is a must. They were dressed in a row, continuing to go deeper, and the coldness was still on the cover of the old turban. They found a narrow grotto deep in the rune hall, with ice-covered rock walls, surrounded by metal-like traces, like an ancient guardian boundary. This place became a temporary resting place, with a biting dampness in the air, and a low rumbling sound was heard far away. It was the energy explosion caused by the rune cracks in the northern European divine realm, which was gradually invading the surrounding boundary. Ling Jun inserted the fragments of the magic sword on the ground, allowing the light to illuminate the dim space. The teacher lit a small pile of rune fires to disperse the surrounding cold. Carl leaned against the wall, placed his giant axe on his knees, breathing heavily, and his face was covered with tired sweat beads. The teacher's eyes swept through the cracked path, and his verbal sympathy brought the wiseness of the old moon. Ling Qian, the collapse of the Three Realms Alliance in the past was not a day or a night. That year, I went deep into the forbidden area with a divine envoy, and the shadow of the curse surrounds people's hearts like a vine. The old grudges among allies grew from that time. The frost giants in northern Europe saw the human race as the weak, and the martial arts masters are also afraid of the arrogance of the divine realm. Carl, didn't your tribe lose the leader because of that battle? Carl hummed and rubbed his sore arms. The leader's death. I still remember those arrogant gods. They agreed to an alliance and turned away at the critical moment. I can't hold the head of the axe now, so what alliance should I talk about? Ling Jun heard it, and the determination in his heart rose like a spring. He clenched his fist to suppress the restless blood force and replied briefly, Master, no matter what old complaints, we cannot let the dark force escalate at the opportunity. Those energy storms have threatened to people. If the scattered masters are not summoned, the balance of the three realms will collapse in the end. His words were settled, and the sacrificial mind quietly gathered, turning into a warm air, relieved Car's fatigue. The master clicked his head, stood up and patted his shoulder. Yes, the shadow of this curse has awakened in your body, but you have a pure will. Let us send a message first to wake those secrets. However, just as they were preparing to leave the grotto, a hidden shock came, and in the darkness far away, there seemed to be a potential enemy figure swaying. The team moved slowly, and Carl's pace was still difficult, but he led the way and the sword light flashed slightly, guiding them towards the road of communication. The road under the ice and snow became narrower and narrower, and the echo of the energy violent echoes were like a war drum, and they walked endlessly. They continued to move along the narrow snow channel of ice and snow. The walls of the channel were as sharp as blades, covered with a thin layer of frost, and were ignited by the strange light. Ling Jun led the way, and the fragments of the divine sword in his hand emitted soft rays, illuminating the darkness ahead and making the surrounding air even more irritating. The teacher followed behind, walking steadily, and Car dragged his heavy axe, breathing like a low growl in the narrow space. Suddenly, a violent shock came from the underground, and a large stone statue giant suddenly appeared in front of the passage. It stands like a mountain, with ancient spell runes engraved on it. These runes begin to shine under the influence of energy violence and emit decadent breath. The giant's eyes flashed with red light, and roared, slamming his stone arm at them. Invader! Its low voice roared like thunder, shaking the ice wall debris flying. Ling Jun pulled out the magic sword fragments without hesitation, and the sword light flashed out like an electric light. He took a deep breath and felt the blood force in his body rushing like a tide, blending with the sarcasm into a pure airflow. Master, Carl, guard the surroundings, he shouted, and the sword's body formed an arc and stabbed the giant's core rune. Carl roared and responded, and the axe slammed the attack on the stone arm. Although the force was fierce, he retreated step by step due to his uneasy physical strength. Just as Lingzhan's art was in full swing, the ice collapse caused by energy explosion suddenly came. The huge ice chunks collapsed from above, forcing them to be distracted. The teacher quickly clicked out a talisman to resolve some of the ice collapse. At the same time, he shouted to Ling Jun, "Boy, remember that when I challenged this guardian that year, it made me lose my stern. That's because I ignored the balance of blood. Don't repeat my cover." His words contained the pain of practice, reminding Ling Jun how the failure that year made him lose his former allies. Ling Jun's heart was shocked, and the sword was even more harmonious. He rushed to avoid the ice block, and rushed up, and a sword slashed towards the runes. The blood force exploded, tearing a crack in the boundary. Carr took the opportunity to re-hit the giant's side wing, and the tacit understanding of the team made the battle slightly slower. After fierce exchanges, the giants retreated at a time. They took the opportunity to move forward and walked deeper towards the road of communication. In front, the channel is wider and the energy waves gradually become flat. Their pace is stable again and ready to face the next challenge. They continued to penetrate deeper along the passage, and a dark heat flowed in the air. The surrounding ice walls turned into crystals, refracting layered light and shadow, moving like living things. Lingqi, holding the fragments of the divine sword, the slash now emitted a stable light, guiding them to avoid the potential danger. The teacher followed, looking around. Carl gasped and adjusted his breathing, carrying the giant axe on his shoulder, revealing his Viking blood stamina. Suddenly, energy flowed in like a whirlpool, distorting the visual line and causing false scenes to appear in the passage. Twisted shadows appear on the ice wall, like the shadows of former warriors, trying to pull their thoughts. Carl growled, "These illusions are like the northern wind's silhouette, slamming their brains." He slashed at a group of illusions with an axe, but only chopped the air, forcing the team to stop. Lingqi felt the senses were chaotic, and the blood in his body was slightly irritated. He pressed down the urge and reminded himself, "Still your feet first." At the most intense moment of the romance, the light ahead gathered into a group of sacred fire rings, and Odin's projection slowly appeared, a tall figure with a single eye flashing with golden light, wearing a stormy cloak. "Descendants of mortals, your blood pure will be tested." Odin's voice was like an ancient thunderbolt, shaking his mind. Lingqi was forced into illusion and faced the shadow of his heart, the pain of losing his friend in the past. He took a deep breath and the sword was erect. "I will not retreat, God King." The sword light pierced the air, tearing the illusion open, revealing the ancient connection between his blood and the divine realm, the blood sect of the former Asgardian guardian. Odin pointed, "Projection faded, your drama has awakened, remember the way to balance." At the same time, the teacher grabbed Carr and shared, "I was lost in the same exam in the past, and my allies left because of this." The teaching was like a deep-seated text. His words were filled with a steady remorse, strengthening the tacit understanding of the team. Energy flows violently, they receive guidance from the light circle, and an ancient rune map floats into the brain. Reorganize the team, they step into the depths of the passage, ready to face the threat of the coming darkness. They advanced along the passage deep, stepped onto the rough rocky belt, and the air around them became sticky and heavy, with a thin fog covering like a ghost, distorting the sound and visual lines. This world is like an ancient curse barrier, hidden in the taboo power of the Northern European divine realm, making the team's pace staggering. Lingqi held the fragments of the magic sword. The slash was now as flashing as sparks, guiding the direction, and unable to completely disperse the surrounding mist. The teacher suddenly stopped and grabbed Lingqi's arm. "Child, do you remember the past I mentioned?" His voice was low and calm, and there was a long-lasting pain in his eyes. As a former traveler, he once went deep into a similar mystery with his allies, but his partner was born due to a moment of negligence. The truth that made him remember the path of balance. Lingqi pointed his head and frowned slightly. "Master, your teachings are as stable as mountains. I will hold on to this group and not let the darkness devour us." This conversation ignited a stronger determination in Lingqi's heart, and the tacit understanding between the master and the disciple quietly deepened. However, Carl's sentiment began to move. He murmured himself and roared the war songs of his ancestors in Viking. The illusion reappeared the scene of the tribe's death, allowing him to dance giant axes and almost attack his teammates. Lingqi stopped it in time. "Carl, don't let the ghosts of the past control you. We are companions." Carl gasped, holding the handle of the axe tightly, and his rough voice burst out, "These magic images greatly extremely roared the ancestral spirit. I have to protect this land." But his out-of-control made the team confused, and the mist in the boundary made them unable to coordinate in time. A deep roar came forward, and the pioneers of the Dark Army had gathered in the northern fortress. The monsters rushed in like a tide, with a strong appearance, and their eyes were covered with blood-colored light. Ling Jun stepped forward, and the sword exploded. The sword light swept the enemy like flames, causing several monsters to fall. He used his blood power to feel a new energy flowing through his body, observing the uncertain backlash. The teacher and Carr joined the battle and worked together to defend the key points. As the battle continued, the sword light lit up the dark fortress, and the team gradually suppressed the demon control tide, which also made Ling Jun realize the price of power. They continued to fight hard and advance step by step. The waves of battle gradually subsided in the fortress, the monsters' bones were scattered among the rough piles of stones, and the air was filled with a pungent smell of sulfur. Ling Jun stood in his arms, and a burning energy in his chest swelled like a rushing stream. The mysterious power from the depths of his blood reached its peak in the war, making his vision unusually clear and intimate stinging pain. He knew very well that if this energy was completely released, it could turn the battle, but the backlash risk could make him fall into a violent purity and distort his mind. Carr cannot rest. His giant axe was still shaking, murmuring the ancient spells of his ancestors, and his illusion came again, turning the stone walls of the fortress into a burning ruin of the tribe. He danced his arms, almost hitting the teacher, and shouted, "These images scattered the flames of the invaders. I want to avenge the blood." This emotional wave exacerbated the interference of the boundary, and the mist condensed again, distorting the sounds around him, making the team's retreat difficult. Ling Jun stepped forward and pressed his shoulder. "Carl, put away your axe, we are not fighting inside." His words were determined and direct, trying to pull back the sanity of his companions. Taking advantage of a moment of breathing, Ling Jun and his teacher retreated to the hidden rock wall. Several mossy plants grew from the stones there, like the quiet guarding of the earth. The teacher sat down, his eyes turned far away, and said in a low voice, "Child, I was as proud as you when I was young. At that time, I mistook the bloody taboo, and released too much power for an indescribable battle, which caused my brother to sleep in the frozen valley forever." His words carried the old monkey's sank, revealing the hidden regrets, and let Ling Jun feel the deep pain behind the teacher's usual severity. Ling Jun clenched his fist and a wave broke out in his heart, but he didn't say much, but just responded, "Master, your teaching is as clear as a stream. I will not let the power swallow my will. We must protect the delicate balance for the three realms." This conversation made the teacher's disciples' connection more tightly, and Ling Jun's determination gradually took shape. He chose to temporarily suppress the blood-suppressing and focused on the journey in front of him. The team regrouped, heading towards the secret treasure's rope, and walked back on the stone path, ready to face the next challenge. The team stepped into the maze of time and space in the northern border, and the cold wind blew over the twisted arch, dyeing the surrounding rocks with a layer of dark light. This maze, engraved by ancient divine power, breathes like a living creature, and every step may trigger hidden whirlpools, making time turn like water. Ling Junqing walked forward, holding the handle in his hand, and felt a storm of breath restlessly in his body, which was the response of blood power. He glanced at the teacher with a warning flash through his eyes, knowing that he had to be vigilant. Suddenly, a time and space whirlpool formed in front of the team, and the ground twisted into a rippling wave, pulling the road ahead into a circle without any consequences. Carl growled, and the giant axe was high. The illusion in his eyes burst out again, and this time he mistook the phantom of the maze as the figure of the invader. "Those shadows! They are burning our home," he roared, slashing at the dance axe toward the swallow, and hitting the teammates a little. Ling Jun quickly stepped forward and grabbed his arm, his lingering as he was as calm as a rock. "Carr, wake up. This is an illusion, not an enemy. Your axe should be left for the real battle." In a mess, the teacher pulled Ling Jun and retreated into a secret time and space crack. The air there seemed to solidify, flashing against the stars like fragments. The teacher said in a deep voice, "Child, I was lost in a similar mystery. It was many years ago when I was chasing the secret treasure, and almost made my soul fall into the circle forever." His words carried a long-lasting fatigue, revealing that hidden piercing, which made Ling Jun's body reach unknown to the teacher. Ling Jun responded, "Master, I understand. Power is as difficult as this rift, and I will stabilize it with my will. They quickly cracked the vortex's ropes, and based on the experience of the master, they embed an ancient rune into the ground, stabilizing the time flow. The team regrouped and continued to move towards the secret baby's pianing. The steps echoed in the reincarnation passage, and the pressure of each person knew the time approached like a tide, and no one spoke much. Walk forward and prepare for the challenge that is coming. The team continued to follow the rumbling passage and penetrated into the core of the time and space maze. There was a biting chill in the air, like an invisible sharp blade striking across the skin. Lingqi held the handle and passed through a hidden gate. The wall inside was composed of flashing crystal columns. Each block reflected a distorted image, pulling the surrounding time into fragmented memories. They finally glanced at the key pieces of the secret ball portrait, a delicate rune stone embedded in the central sacrificial forum, emitting a lilac light. However, as soon as we approached, the dark force suddenly rose from the hidden shadow. Several assassins in black robes appeared like ghosts, their weapons were flashing with strange green light, accompanied by a low roar. "Invader, let your soul," a leader roared, his voice like thunder. The battle exploded in an instant, and the slash slammed and the blade collided with the enemy, causing sparks. Carl roared forward, danced with a giant axe, slashing the two enemies, ignoring the time and space whirlpool under his feet. The whirlwind was like a violent tide, distorting the surrounding time flow, making the movement become irritating, and the enemy was extremely agile. "Carl, be careful!" Lingqi shouted, trying to pull his allies back, but it was too late. A green dagger stabbed at the core of the team, and Carl suddenly slapped in front of him, smashing the attack with his axe, and replacing his life with his body. The blood was pouring out, and he murmured when he fell down, "Brothers, protect our home." Teammate Wu was in sorrow at the time. The teacher helped Lingqi up, with pain in his eyes. "Child, I lost my brothers in the Divine Realm War. The pain is like a deep-seated text that will never fade away." His words are heavy, revealing that hidden injury, allowing Lingqi to feel the teacher's will. The anger surged into his heart, and the blood force in the trunk began to wake up, and a warm energy flowed along the trunk. He held the sword station, and the sword light became stronger and forced the enemy to retreat. The teacher pointed out, "Use your will to drive it, and don't blind hatred." The battle was aborted, and the team was surrounded by Car's body and had no time to stay. The pressure of the time and space vortex was approaching. They must carry a new life to move towards the next level. The sound of the footsteps is rumbling between the crystal columns, and each step carries a heavy memory. The team moved forward in the echo of the crystal pillar. Lingqi held the handle tightly, and carried his remaining partners through the depths of the mistress of time and space. The air was burning and hot, as if it was lit by invisible flames. Every step was stepped on the unpredictable ground. The stone blocks there were flashes of ancient runes, implicitly predicting the majesty of the divine realm. They finally entered the core of the northern European divine realm, and a vast dome was like a burning flame, and the red light reflected the surrounding frost mountains, making people feel the primitive power of the mythological era. The Dark Force army had already gathered, hundreds of black-armored warriors rushed over like a tide, and their weapons radiated from slight light, roaring as they shook the sky. Lingqi took a deep breath, and the blood force in his body surged like a torrent. He swung the ball to welcome him, and the first shot was to break through the night sky and drop several enemies. The teacher was guarding her and reminded her in a low voice, "Don't be strong, this vortex will swallow your speed." Sure enough, the vortex on the ground suddenly stormed, pulling the allies' movements into a slow shadow. The enemy was as agile as ghosts, and a blue light spear stabbed straight at the secret treasure fragments. Lingqi gritted his teeth and slammed. The sword light exploded, and the vortex was temporarily pressed. The teacher put up a staff and smashed the attacks around him. In the midst of the battle, the teacher glanced at Lingqi, and his eyes flashed with shadows from the past. "I once saw my brothers turning into ice sculptures in the affairs of the divine realm. At that moment, I swore to protect this flame-like glory." His words were short and powerful, and inspired Lingqi's will, allowing the young drama to feel the teacher's unyielding will. The anger turned into force, and the slam was rotating, and the blade swept across the enemy like a rapid wind, protecting the core of the team. Despite the constant interference, they pushed forward step by step, finally holding the secret treasure fragments in their hands. As the battle took a break, the team continued to move forward with a breath of breath and headed towards the next temple, each figure carrying an unfinished mission. The roar behind him gradually moved away, and their steps were stable under the flame dome. The team stepped forward on the scorching ground, and the silhouette of the Temple of Fire gradually became clear from afar, like an ancient giant standing in the frozen valley. Lingqi took the lead, the tip of the sword moved slightly, and the hidden blood force in his body was ready to move like an undercurrent. He glanced at the teacher beside him. The two of them had a tacit understanding and could feel each other's warning. The temple gate is full of twisted runes. These runes are moving like living things, scattering strange breaths that distort the space, allowing the surrounding air to condense and rush quickly. As soon as he entered the temple, the Demon King's body suddenly appeared and turned into a huge shadow that devoured everything. His dark body was as loud as a mountain, releasing thick dark energy, swallowing up the light around him. The giant shadow roared, and the energy wave rolled in. Lingqi immediately rushed to meet the sword. The sword tore through the darkness like a flash, and was blown open by an invisible resistance. At the same time, the time turbulence in the temple began to rage. The accelerated rapid drama made the enemy's attack fall like a rainstorm, and then suddenly slammed, forcing Lingqi's movements to become irritating, and the support of allies broke in an instant. Lingqi bit his teeth tightly, and vigorously regulates the force of blood circulation, turning the storm into a wild spin, trying to calm his feet. The master slapped his staff, smashed a wave of dark energy, and gasped, saying, "Boy, do you remember? I fought this demon king in the border area of the divine realm that year. It once gave me the freedom of my arm. At that time, I vowed not to let this evil rage again. If you have my blood inheritance, keeping your righteousness, you will overcome everything." His words were simple and determined, hidden in the shadow of the pain in the past, and inspiring Lingqi's struggle to rise in an instant. However, the time turbulence reversed again, accelerating the attack of the giant shadow and causing Lingqi's sword to fail. He felt a sudden rise, and the blood force exploded, slowly suppressing the dark energy, and the teacher took advantage of the opportunity to protect the core of the team. The battle fell into a rubber, and each strike seemed to challenge the fate of the battle. They approached the Devil's Key step by step, but the crisis was not resolved. The team gasped and adjusted their shapes, continued to push deep into the temple, and each figure walked forward in the chaotic energy. Lingqi swept the next wave of dark energy, and felt the space around his body sway like a wave. The balance of the three realms began to collapse under the rampage of the Demon King. There seemed to be invisible cracks hidden in the air, causing the walls of the Temple of Fire to be twisted and deformed. He glanced at the wounded mouth of the teacher covering his shoulders, and his blood stained his sleeves, reminding the team that they were exhausted. "You can't fight hard anymore," Lingqi turned his mind and shouted, "Retreat! This dark wave is swallowing the line of the realm, we must first calm the foundation of the three realms." The team retreated, and the Demon King's pursuit rushed towards him like a stormy tide. The dark energy turned into a winding touch, trying to pull them back to the depths of the temple. Secondary obstacles followed one after another, and an ally resurrected due to an old injury, and his pace became staggering, dragging down the rhythm of the entire team. Lingqi gritted his teeth and carried the ally, and the blood force burst out with a chill in his body, as if the shouting of the northern European glacier helped him to tear open a crack in time and space. This rift sucks light like a whirlpool, and the inside is filled with chaotic storm, making it difficult for people to stand firm. Moving forward in the rift, the teacher leaned against Lingqi and said in a low voice, "Boy, do you remember the alliance I used to do? In the border of the divine realm, I once vowed with God to protect the barriers of the three realms, but the alliance was shattered by betrayal, and many of my comrades left." His temperament was rough and solid, hiding the pain of being tired from the age of lunar month, and was still excited. "Your blood is responsible for that mission, don't let it be free." Lingqi pointed his head silently, his hands holding the sword tighter, and the tacit understanding between the master and the disciple was like an invisible chain, deepening their determination. Through the cracks, they finally stepped into the edge of the Northern European divine realm. The frost mountains there stood like a giant's back, bringing a clear breath. The team gasped and adjusted the team shape, prepared to find the gods to help, and walked step by step towards the revival of ancient dramas. Stepping into the frosty mountain slopes of the Northern European divine realm, Lingqi led his team forward along the rough ice ridge. The mountain wind cuts the air like a knife, stepping on the frosty rocks every step. Away from a distance, an ancient fortress emerged, like a throne left by a giant. The rune light around it flashed in the blizzard of snow, radiating the power of the sacred. In this extremely cold place, fresh environmental elements made the team's policemen feel. Although the teacher's pace was quiet, his eyes were still sharp, reminding him that he had fought against wild animals in the border area of the divine realm, when he alone protected the border of the Alliance. However, the dark energy of the Demon King had penetrated from the rift, turning into a cold fog-shaped mountain road, trying to draw the runes of the corrupt sacrificial Lingqi opened the road and felt a strange resistance pulling his arm. He gritted his teeth and said, "Master, this magic is as clingy as a living thing. We have to speed up our pace." In the team, an ally broke out again, and his knees slid down from the ice cliff. Lingqi held him with a single hand, and the power in his blood quietly stormed, bringing a warm barrier, which also increased the consumption of physical strength. Secondary obstacles came one after another, and the cold wind came violently. The snowflakes whipped the face like sharp arrows, making the progress become dull. Before arriving at the sacrificial fortress, Lingqi placed his allies on the stone platform. The teacher pointed his head and said, his words were as calm as a mountain, "Boy, the past alliance was not just a vow, but also an ancient elves in the divine realm. I have seen your blood source, which is a sword that melts ice and fire. The betrayer used it to tear the boundary line, causing me to lose my brother." His words were straightforward and powerful, with unspeakable regrets, which inspired Lingqi's determination. Lingqi held the tight handle and responded briefly, "I won't let history repeat itself." At the beginning of the stance, Lingqi placed the divine sword in the center of the sacrificial sacrific. The dark energy took advantage of the opportunity to sway the runes around it, but he used art to resolve it, and the sword light planned to break the smoke like a flash. After some striking, the sword body shone with light, blending into the purity of frost, and stabilizing the balance of the three realms. The team gasped and prepared to continue moving forward. The storm of the mountain continued to shout, but their pace was more determined. The team left the fort and walked along the winding ice path into a hidden valley. The wind here was slightly calmer, and the snow-covered rock walls were like natural barriers, blocking the outside world's turmoil. Lingqi led everyone to settle down at the bottom of the valley. The light on the sword had not completely subsided, and a warm wave was emitted, making people feel that the divine power was still moving. He glanced at his allies' faces, and the old wound was in the cold again. His knees trembled slightly. In order not to delay the trip, Lingqi decided to search for nearby herbs. There are several rare frost trees hidden in this valley, saying that they can relieve deep-level injuries. He turned his back and opened the snow layer, his fingers touched the cold plant roots, and the pressure of blood and awakening involuntarily appeared in the sea of brain. Could that hidden force really shoulder the heavy responsibility of the three realms? A cold breath quietly poured in, as if the devastating atmosphere of dark power, trying to draw into his mind and make the thoughts messy. Ling Jun held the handle of the sword, forced himself to focus, took off the frost lawn and handed it over to his allies to swallow it. The allies were grateful to the place and said in a whisper, "I'm going to care about you, otherwise I'm afraid I can't finish this journey." The fire burned, and the flames reflected the teacher's face. His eyes were as sure as a rock, revealing a past. "Boy, my lost brother was once the guardian of the divine realm," said the teacher, his voice low and powerful. He was confused by the betrayer's sweet words, distorted the true meaning of the alliance, and finally turned into a dark minion. "That sword is not only the source of your blood, but also the humiliation of our family." This conversation reminded Ling Jun of the lonely courage of his teacher Fu Nian. At that time, he defended the border alone, holding an ordinary long sword to resolve countless crises, and also lost love. Ling Jun replied, "Master, I understand this heavy lifting, but I won't retreat." His words were determined, and there was a hidden wave in his heart. The magic once again tried to invade the image, but was dispersed by the heat of the fire and the trust between the disciples. The allies' injuries were getting stable, and everyone sat around for a moment, adjusted their breathing, and prepared to face a more steeper path ahead. The night in the valley became deeper, and the team stood up silently, the light flashed in the snow. Although their pace was quiet, their will had already condensed and continued to move towards the shadow of the dark army. The team advanced along the secret snow valley little corner, and the cold wind blades were like a hidden sword plot to pass through the air, guiding them toward the core nest of the dark army. Ling Jun held the magic sword in his hand, and the body burst out with blue light, illuminating the winding hole in front of him. There was a whirlpool with magical air that was about to exude, ready to move like a living thing. Afterwards, the allies were in a steady state and they were warned by the threat of snow in the mountains. Suddenly, a violent shock came from the underground, the ice walls cracked, and the gravel and snow fell like crazy. The secondary obstacles were unwarranted, forcing the team to scatter. Ling Junxiang swept the rocks and protected the fighters around him. He saw the teacher Fu Rum alone fight against a group of condensed demon shadows. The demon shadow was twisted like a living spirit, and it originated from the devil's remaining will. The battle was fierce in the moment, and the sword light collided with the dark air, bursting out dazzling sparks. After a moment of rest in the war, Ling Jun and his teacher gasped back to back. The teacher's eyes were as bright as cold iron, revealing the ultimate secret of the family's blood. "Boy, my blood once blended with the flames of the divine realm. That power is not only protected, but also the price of the victim." His words were low and powerful, carrying the lonely memory of the town guarding the border during his youth, and triggering the awakening potential hidden in the Lingqi body. A burning energy surged along the way, making his move even more domineering. The dark force of defense began to move, the magic shadow gradually dissipated, and the vigorous light appeared like the dawn light. However, the ignorant breath was still lying deep in the nest, reminding them that the crisis had not been eliminated. The team reunited, and their will condensed like steel and continued to push into the interior. The team stepped into the depths of the nest, and the deep hall seemed like a living giant beast. The walls were filled with twisted runes, emitting decadent spirit light, forcing every step to walk on thin ice. Ling Jun led his way forward, and the divine sword in his hand burst out with a hot fire, illuminating the darkness around him, reminding him of the ancient cuckoo of blood in his body. Allies spread out, and warily approaching the hidden trap. A stream of soul phantoms emerged from the ground, transforming into a shadow of love in the past, trying to move their will. The devil's body is hidden in the center of the hall, and a group of chaotic shadows condense into shape, roaring like thunder, shaking the air and twisting. Ling Jun stepped forward, and the blade collided with the magic, arousing the flames of the aerial fire. It was the power of the Northern European flame deep in the blood, which originated from the ancient divine realm. The battle was fierce, and the secondary trap was activated without warning. The phantom swayed the master and pulled him into the deep illusion. The teacher snatched her back and said in a low voice, "Ling Jun, remember the oath of my family. The bloody sacred is not only for protection, but also forever flames." His words were like diamonds, hiding the bitterness of the lonely army fighting in the divine realm when he was young, which stimulated the potential of Ling Jun's body. He used the magical network like a rain of wind, tearing apart the surrounding magic network. Allies resolve the Phantom's confusion and show their determination to keep their hearts in mind. The Demon King saw that the victory was not good, so he turned his back and attacked, gathering his strength to turn into a giant claw to grab Ling Jun. At the critical moment, Ling Jun and the Master fought back and forth, and the sword light and blood flame combined into one, and penetrated the core of the Demon King. The dark force faded like a tide, the haze in the hall gradually melted, and the three realms were bathed in the light of the warmth. At the end of the battle, Ling Jun looked back at the teacher, his eyes full of gratitude. "Master, your teaching will last forever," he said, his voice as if it were rocks. The team left the nest and entered the dawn of dawn. The rebirth of humans and divine realms symbolizes the arrival of peace. Ling Qian's growth path is full at this moment, and the bloody group turns into a guardian legend. The wind blew across the valley lightly, and everything was calm.